is up, guys? I've got 3 different versions of Abaddon the Despoiler brewed across the power level spectrum. Be sure to let me know which one is your favorite in the comments below. And I also want to thank Mid-Tier for the deck tech recommendation. In order to keep the power level of the first deck low, I decided to focus on a warrior theme instead of direct synergies with Abaddon. The potential card advantage from Abaddon can help us snowball a board state with extra damage, or help us find a little bit of extra card draw. My favorite cards in the deck are the Intimidators, which say that cowards can't block warriors. It's a great way to make Abaddon unblockable and guarantee the cascade. The main win conditions in the deck are going to be Morag, Fury of Vacom, which can give us extra combat steps, in addition to Berserker's Onslaught, Gratuitous Violence, and the Shared Animosity to help us get that extra damage through. Cascade decks, it's a good idea to run more proactive removal. That way when you're cascading, you'll be able to get a little bit more value, and it won't be so awkward when you hit counter spells off of your cascade. Undaunted on Curtain's Call also means that we get to cascade a 6 mana spell for essentially 3 mana. We've got a few interesting artifacts going on here, stuff like Bontu's Monument to help drain the table. I like Obelisk of Erd since it has that Convoke, and it is a pretty high costed spell, so it's going to be able to cascade for 6. Thunderhawk Gunship makes Astarte Warriors, in addition to giving our team flying. The kicker cost on Overflowing Chalice as well as Skyclave Relic can be paid for when you're casting the spell off of a cascade. The really interesting one is the Oketra's Monument, which isn't really going to reduce our creature spells, but we are going to be able to make 1/1 warrior creature tokens whenever we cast a creature spell. Aside from our main win conditions, we got a few ways to draw cards like Coastal Piracy, Kindred Discovery. Like the Molten Echoes, it's going to let us double up on some of our ETBs, especially if you find a Fleshbag Marauder or a Merciless Executioner. Moving to the middle of the power spectrum gets pretty spicy with 2 ways to infinitely cascade. The first is with Rakdos and Ancestral Statue. As long as opponents have lost 4 life this turn, you can cast Ancestral Statue for free and cascade with Abaddon. Ancestral ETB returns it to its owner's hand. Repeat until you find an Impact Tremors or a Bontu's Monument. The second way is with Birgi and Grinning Ignis. First, you cast Grinning Ignis and Birgi makes a red mana. Use the red mana to return Grinning Ignis to your hand and make 3 more mana. From here, you can continue to cast Grinning Ignis and cascade until you find an Impact Tremors, or until you cascade into enough artifact ramp and a tutor so you can cast Perforos. The upgrades I made were generally towards synergy, stuff like Night Market Lookout, Loyal Subordinate, Creeping, Bloodsucker, ways to continuously ping the table and get pretty high numbers on Abaddon consistently, in addition to having other ways to gain advantage of casting spells from exile, or cards like Neheb to generate a lot of extra mana. The Evoke interaction is pretty sweet since you can essentially pay 1 mana for something like an Ingot Chewer and then cascade on 5. In addition to being cheap cascade, they also just have pretty decent effects. Upgrading the interaction has been pretty straightforward. We've added a few of the Delve cards, more ways to cast high costed spells for pretty cheap. Delay Blast Ball is just super sweet in cascade deck since when you cast that spell from exile, you're going to be able to deal 5 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. The artifact here is going to be the Scroll Rack, since we can use it to kind of guarantee certain cascades. Also added the Suspend Mana Rocks, that way if we do end up cascading into them, we can use the extra mana we make off of them to cast other spells and hopefully continue cascading. Upgrading our land base from that previous version, we want our lands entering the battlefield untapped a little more consistently than in the previous version. If you're enjoying the video so far and you've gained a little bit more perspective about power levels in EDH, then be sure to like and subscribe. Let's talk about the cEDH version. I approached it like Yggdra's Storm, and if you've never seen that before, basically we want to get Cascade online and then cast a 1 mana value spell and hopefully hit a Wheel of Fate or a Profane Tutor. This way we can keep storming off with a new hand if we find the Wheel of Fate, or we can find Adnaz with our Tutor. The primary win cons are going to be Thassa's Oracle plus Demonic Consultation, or Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Underworld Bridge to mill out our opponents and cast a wheel, forcing them to deck out. This deck has 5 wheels in it, which is a good bit, and that's why we are on the Notion Thief as well as Mnemonic Betrayal. Since we can potentially fill up those graveyards, we can also kind of do it with Dothi, although we don't get as much choice as we would with the Mnemonic Betrayal. I'm also a big fan of the Dragon's Rage Channeler, helps us while we are cascading and storming off. But later in the game, it eventually becomes a 3/3 with flying, which is a really great way to trigger Abaddon. This thing here is that since we are in arguably some of the best colors, we do get access to a lot of really great one-cost cards that can help us ramp or tutor or just act as really flexible removal spells. I'm also a big fan of the high-costed counter spells since they won't get in the way while trying to cascade into our 0-drops. I have a good bit of 0 mana artifact ramp, and this is overall fine. If we do happen to hit one of these, we can use it to cast another 1-cost spell, hopefully get either that Wheel of Fate or the Profane Tutor. It's also going to be important for ramping us in the early game and getting Abaddon out ASAP. While we do want Abaddon out, he's not entirely necessary for the deck to work, which is actually something that's really nice about these colors in general. We've got our classic enchantments, and then moving on to the lands. All of our lands are entering the battlefield untapped, and we also have 0 repeats for that Tainted Pact mana bait. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. If you're interested in seeing a Geyerston Starn cEDH deck tech, then be sure to check out this video here.